Pfizer, they figured it out, you know, come on.
I flip my boner up into my waistband. It hides it and it feels awesome.
Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Brain Blaze. As always, I'm your host Simon. Welcome to the show. Why am I here? One of my writers, in this case Dave, writes me a script about the Darwin Awards. Thank you, Dave. Welcome. I've never read it before. We're going to read it together. Let's jump in. Ever since I first received a circular email containing a list of Darwin Awards, I found the whole thing to be both fascinating and greatly amusing. Yeah, I have to say, I think I was subscribed to like the Darwin Awards newsletter. It was probably one of the first ever newsletters I subscribed to back when I was at school. And it probably wasn't one of the first, I feel like it was one of the first email newsletters to ever exist. And I enjoyed the shit out of it. And now I make videos about people getting their bits broken or dying in horrible ways because they're stupid. God, it's grim, isn't it? Although I don't personally know anybody who has managed to achieve this prestigious honour, I've run into quite a few people over the years who, given time, will almost certainly make the list. These include, but are not limited to, the student at my school who decided that it would be a good idea to drill through a piece of wood that he was holding in his lap. This resulted in one punctured testicle. Jesus Christ, what are you doing? Like, I can imagine the stupidity of like doing it on your knee or between your legs, but like literally on your groin? What are you doing, son? I met a guy at a party once who had consumed such a potent cocktail of illegal substances that despite being advised to the contrary, believed he could parachute off a roof using only a bedsheet. He could not. And perhaps my favourite, the two lads who thought that it would be a good idea to spray paint little pink flowers all over vehicles belonging to the local motorbike group who used to meet once a week at my pub. That sounds dangerous. Dave said that this was like motorcycle group. It sounds an awful lot like motorcycle gang, doesn't it, Dave? Ugh. I can't think of a really good like specific example of anyone I know who's like gonna get a Darwin Award. There was like one of the funniest things I remember, like one of my mates' dads when we were young was like, we're just a group of friends. And we're all like fairly normal. One of the group was a bit more like Larry than the others. And one day, like this mate starts like, yeah, I mean, if one of you is going to go to prison, it's going to be him. It's like, okay, well, how about none of us go to prison? Although these were undoubted, so funny because on the other hand, we were also like, yeah, I could imagine that. I could imagine him going to prison. Just like. Fascinating tangent, Simon. Let's carry on. Although these were undoubtedly incredibly stupid people who, according to DarwinAwards.com, displayed sublimely idiotic misapplication of judgment to the best of my knowledge, none of them actually died or sterilized themselves, and thus fell short of being Darwin Award nominees. Can you get like a half Darwin for like one testicle? I guess not. Fortunately for us, the internet is replete with examples of people who did happen to know that you can still have kids with one testicle. Like a mate of mine had, like one day, he was just like, checking himself down below, as you do. And he's like, oh, hello there. Went to the doctor and they were like, oh, that's got to come out. And he has, now he's got one testicle. And apparently that's just fine. You can make do with just one. Fortunately for us, the internet is replete with examples of people who did qualify. And in today's episode, we shall have a look at some of the most recent examples. So please, sit back, relax, and take some reassurance from the fact that people on this list will no longer be driving around in cars owning firearms or voting. Because they're dead. I mean, hang on, but Darwin Awards, it's not just about being dead, it's also about losing the ability to reproduce, so they could definitely be driving around owning firearms or voting, unless you've just specifically focused on people who died, Dave, which is awfully morbid, isn't it, mate? MacBook body armor. What are you doing? MacBooks do feel very tough, though. Like, I don't know, until I switched to Apple, which was... God, it's got to be like 10 years ago now. But before that, all my laptops were kind of plasticky. And then you get a MacBook and you're like, it's just like a piece of metal. But I would not trust it to stop a bullet. Because bullets are also metal. And they're fired out of a big metal thing with explosives in them.
Kaboom? Yes, Rico. Kaboom.
There is little doubt that an Apple MacBook is a superior quality device in almost any field. I am using one right now. Simon uses one, and all the best writers use it. All the best people do, to be honest. People always get so spicy about this. I literally don't care. I also use... I used to use a PC, as well as a Mac at the same time, because PCs... generally better. Like, you can get more bang for your buck for video editing and stuff, but I don't really edit my videos anymore, so I just use a Mac. But I'm fine with both. They're really... Oh, I do use Windows. Like, the server that I store all my videos on is Windows, so I do occasionally interact with that, and it's fine. Except for Danny, whose writing talent transcends any computer hardware and allows him to simply think documents into existence. However, as one Russian soldier found out, there are a couple of things for which you should not use a MacBook, and one of those is a replacement for body armor. As the story goes, during the battle for Irpin in Ukraine, this is recent, a Russian soldier came across an abandoned MacBook. Rather than handing it in to lost property like any law-abiding citizen would do, he decided to keep it for himself, in much the same way that the person sitting behind me on the train from London to Portsmouth did when I briefly left mine unattended in a bag under my seat. Yeah. I think I told this story. I literally told it super recently. Dave's blind and someone stole his computer. This is the shittiest individual that you could possibly... stealing a computer from a blind man. What the If you happen to be watching this, I hope your ears get turned to arseholes and you spend the rest of your life shitting down the back of your neck. Not that I'm bitter about it or anything. Anyway, you have a right to be bitter about it, Dave. That was a mega douchebag move by that dude. Anyway, after deciding that this American-made computer would be the perfect thing to take home with him to Mother Russia, pretty sure that MacBooks are not American-made. They are... What do they always say? It's like, designed in California, assembled in China. They're Chinese-made. They're Chinese-made. Like everything. I made a video about how and like when and if the US is going to go to war with China. And I'm like, oh man, so much is made in China. It'd be really tough. Things would get really expensive and people would die as well. But I'm also considering about like, I like the fact that I can get a TV for fairly cheap. The death is additional. Just a joke. Just a joke. War's horrible. For prices. He's going to take it back to Mother Russia and he had to decide exactly how best to prevent it from being discovered. He could not just put it in his pack. Somebody might steal it. He could not just carry it around with him in his hands. That would put him at tactical disadvantage while fighting in an illegal war. Finally, he came up with the perfect solution. After unstitching his bulletproof vest and removing the chest plate, he discovered that the resulting empty pocket was a perfect place in which to hide his ill-gotten device. You deserve it!
It's your funeral.
He must have felt so smug as he battled alongside his comrades. After all, he had a MacBook and they did not. However, this smugness was short-lived, as shortly after he swapped his chest plate for a thin piece of brushed aluminium and circuit boards, he took a bullet to the chest and died. I shouldn't be laughing, but it's like, you're a soldier in an illegal war and you tried to steal like some civilian's MacBook. You. I don't want to come across as unsympathetic, but I am, and I lack the necessary writing talent to disguise it. While I appreciate that it is a complex situation and many Russian soldiers probably don't actually want to be in Ukraine, stealing is stealing and stupidity is stupidity. Handgun booby trap. Although one of the main arguments put forward in favor of being able to own any firearm you wish is that the majority of gun owners are sensible, well-rounded individuals who keep their guns locked in a safe, this is not always the case. Yeah, I'm pretty sure like the vast majority of people who own guns, everyone who I know who owns a gun is super responsible about it. They have a big gun safe. They don't let their kids fucking touch. Their kids probably don't even know they have a gun. It's always locked away. Usually not in the house. Like most people I know. I don't actually know that many people with guns, but the ones I do know, they don't even keep it in the house. They keep it at a range or at the office. Definitely in a big safe.
This is my rifle, this is my gun, this is for fighting, this is for fun.
Let me introduce you to the late Ronald Sear, who was neither sensible nor kept his gun locked in a safe. A resident of Van Buren in the state of Maine, about 320 miles or 550 kilometers from Portland, Sear had allegedly been the victim of several burglaries over the years. This is also, if you're like the victim of burglaries and you want a gun for self-defense, it's also a bit of a hassle if it's in a safe, right? Because then you're like, oh no, someone's breaking into my house. Okay, gotta go downstairs, gotta open up the gun safe, gotta find the key, gotta load the gun. Whereas, and by that point, your house has been burgled.
Time up!
And the police have arrived. So it kind of defeats the point, but obviously you don't want your children to shoot themselves in the face by accident because that's bad. Or whatever the f*** happened to Sear. According to an article in The Guardian, although he had reported these burglaries to the police, they brushed him off as a senile old man and nothing was done about it. Senile old man, you just think your house is being robbed. Where's all my shit then, police? Where's all my shit? Understandably, Sear was less than pleased with this response. After attempting to use security lights and cameras to deter burglars with no success, he decided that a much more, shall we say, fatal deterrent was necessary. He devised a system whereby a handgun would be discharged in the direction of his front door should it be opened by anybody other than him. According to his sister, quote, "We were not in favor of him doing that because he wasn't used to guns. Really, that was not his forte, but he was so frustrated." As it transpired, this would turn out to be an exceptionally astute assessment of Mr. Sear's ability. communities. On Thursday, November the 28th, 2019, the police received a call from Sire saying that he had been shot. Both police and medics rushed to his home address and spent some time attempting to treat him at the scene, but unfortunately he'd later succumbed to his injuries. Bearing in mind that the police were under the impression that he had been shot by an intruder, they were somewhat surprised to discover that he had, in fact, been shot by his own booby trap. The subsequent search of the property turned up a number of other homemade traps, and the bomb squad was called in. It's like some Home Alone, motherfucker. As far as I've been able to discover, he had no children, and given that he was 65 years old at the time of its death, it's fairly unlikely that had he survived, he would have continued his bloodline any further. Still, I guess there was always a chance. Interestingly, although the state of Maine permits the use of deadly force against a home intruder, not if it's a booby trap, dude. It's generally accepted that booby traps, disguised or concealed devices designed to cause harm, are illegal. Sensibly so. People have previously been found guilty of first-degree murder when intruders have been killed by such devices. But not if you shoot them yourself.
Just do it! Don't let your dreams be dreams.
The thrill of the chase. It's no secret that we, as a species, love a good story about buried treasure. Filmmakers have been cashing in on this fact for years, and it seems that no matter the actual quality of the movie, anything involving treasure hunting will usually result in a huge box office taking. I should make videos about treasure hunting then, shouldn't I, Dave? I wonder, could I make a video about treasure? I guess you could do like 5 treasure hunts that turned out badly. Treasure hunts that resulted in unexpected winnings. You know, those are actually not bad video titles. I should do something on treasure hunting. It does work very well, doesn't it? People love treasure. It's exciting. I think I did one about that Oak Island money pit, which is some History Channel bullshit, but people watch that shit. People watched my video about it. After this, I'm going to come up with some ideas for treasure hunting. But it's not just in movies or books that treasure hunting happens. Oh no, countless people dedicate their entire lives to studying old books and maps in the hope that they will somehow be the person who discovers a vast fortune buried underground somewhere. Isn't it? I feel like in the UK, we have this law where it's like, if you find treasure, like the government gets like 90% of it. And that's if it's not of like archaeological. Like if you discover some hoard of Roman coins or whatever, the government's just like, yeah, it's going in a museum, mate. And so I found it on my land. And they're like, yeah, sorry. I'm not sure if that's the law, but I think there's some shit like that, which like strongly disincentivize you to go out and look for treasure, doesn't it? Or it also might just be like, oh no, what? I found all these coins? Oh no, I melted them down? What? Don't do that. That's probably a crime.
Oh, crap. Am I going to be upbeat? I'm arrested.
Personally, I've never quite understood this. If I were in possession of a large fortune that I needed to keep hidden for a while, I would make sure that I put it somewhere memorable to me and certainly would not bother drawing up a map so that any old scrounger could find it. I don't know. I can imagine, like, if you, like, let's say you're interested in gold or whatever and you don't trust it to be kept in a bank or whatever, then you'd be like, cool, I'm going to go bury this in the woods and no one's ever going to find it. But of course, I'm going to, like, write down the GPS coordinates and keep those tucked away somewhere. And then it's not unreasonable to think that you might die at some point. Someone's going through your and find some GPS coordinates. And it's like, oh my God, either there are bodies buried or something cool. And then you go there and you find like all this buried gold. I can imagine that absolutely happening. Nevertheless, I appear to be in the minority here, as evidenced by people continuing to return to Oak Island. People continue to return to Oak Island because the History Channel has made you believe that there's stuff there, but there's not. It's nonsense. Stop watching the History Channel. It's bullshit. Does History Channel have an... it's been so long. I don't think I've watched the History Channel since I literally left home. Because I think it was one of those channels, you know, Sky Channel 5007 or whatever. But since leaving, I don't think I've ever had television since I've left home. It's always just been streaming services. Wow. Yeah, no, I haven't seen the History Channel in 20 years. Do they show anything good on the History Channel anymore? Or is it just shit?
You're watching the History Channel, where the truth is history.
Who needs to read a bunch of stupid books when we've got History Channel?
This brings us in a roundabout way to our next entry. Michael Sexton was a different kind of treasure hunter. Not for him spending years and years studying maps and then planning out a well-thought-out expedition to a treasure site, spending weeks digging holes and returning empty-handed. No. Sexton knew exactly where the treasure was buried and planned to return from collecting it the same day. After having successfully deciphered all the poetic clues contained within a book written by eccentric art dealer Forrest Fenn, clues which would allegedly lead him to $2 million worth of hidden treasure, he and one other man made the journey to Dinosaur National Monument on the Colorado-Utah border. Although approximately 330,000 other people had tried, 330,000 people! I've never heard of this. To find the treasure, Sexton was so sure that he knew its location, he didn't bother taking any supplies or equipment with him as he and his partner set off into the mountains. Bro, don't go off into the mountains without anything. At least take a bottle of water. Come on.
No.
As you may not be entirely surprised to hear, Sexton was mistaken when it came to the location of the alleged treasure. Not only that, he and his companion lost their bearings, and if it were not for a timely rescue by people who actually knew what they were doing, the pair would have frozen to death overnight. Wait, I thought people were supposed to die, Dave. Come on, kill him off already. Now, I'm thirsty for blood, Dave! Now, if that were me, I think I would have put my treasure hunting days behind me, and if I were desperate to make a little money, perhaps written a book about that time I nearly died during a treasure hunt. Doesn't sound very entertaining, does it? It's literally made up like 2 minutes of this video. Not Sexton, though. 1 month later, he and the same friend were back. However, this time they'd brought supplies. Loaded up with 4 chocolate bars, 2 bottles of water, and a copy of the book that had started all of this, they once again set off in search for the treasure. Sadly or not, depending on how staunchly you support the idea of the survival of the fittest, this time they were not so lucky. Not only did they once again fail to find the treasure, they would once again become lost. But on this occasion, for Sexton at least, help would not arrive in time when he froze to death on the mountain. Why not just go in summer? Just wait. 330,000 people are trying to find it and failed. No one's going to find it before next summer, Sexton. Just wait until the weather gets nice. His companion would eventually recover, but still refuses to discuss either expedition. All things considered, they certainly would have been better off buying lottery tickets. Not only would it have given them similar statistical chances of becoming rich, but they could have failed to do so in the nice and warm inside. Rhino poacher killed by elephants. Rhino poaching is a big problem in South Africa. These incredible animals have been hunted almost to extinction for no better reason than for evil people to sell powdered rhino horn to ignorant individuals. Dave, what are you talking about? Rhino horn makes me extra hard, Dave. I'm always a loon for rhino horn. Please stop that. It's obviously nonsense. And look, I mean, I get it in the past where people were like, rhino horn, it solved my impotence. But why would that still be a thing when there are actually drugs that solve this? Surely the demand for rhino or whatever the does, you know, or tiger's bones or whatever would have like dried up when drug companies figured that out. Why can't I think of a name of a single drug? Pfizer! They figured it out, you know? Come on!
I flip my boner up into my waistband. It hides it and it feels awesome. I almost put a load into my belly button.
Nowhere is this more of a problem than in Kruger National Park, which contains the largest concentration of rhinos on the planet. Or as I like to say, the largest concentration of natural Viagra, Dave. On the 1st of April 2019, 4 men, unable to resist the temptation of these rhinos any longer, entered the park in order to snag one or two. Unfortunately, and amazingly, the group was spotted by an elephant who decided that they weren't having any of that. The elephant brutally attacked and killed one of the poachers, leaving his companions to carry away the body and leave it by the roadside where they believed it would be found the next day. What? Just leave it. If you're going to just dump the body by the side of the road, why not just leave it with elephants? Like, okay. Once the surviving poachers reported the death to family members, the police were contacted and a search for the body was carried out. However, due to the failing light, the search was abandoned for the night. The next day, the body, or at least a little bit of it, was discovered beside a nearby lake. Yeah, I can't imagine that. You're near Kruger National Park, famous for like wildlife that eats and it's like there's just a body. That is going to be eaten by something, isn't it? According to a police report, all that was found was a skull and a pair of trousers. It's believed that the remains were eaten by a pack of lions. In one of the finest examples of stating the obvious that I've ever heard, the managing executive of Kruger National Park said, "Entering Kruger National Park illegally and on foot is not wise. It holds many dangers, and this incident is evidence of that." While all unnecessary death is tragic, this guy really brought it upon himself. On top of that, the story really does demonstrate survival of the fittest at work. In this case, the man in question was not fitter than an elephant. For those of you who are interested, the 3 other members of the poaching party were arrested and charged. Why would you, if I was in a poaching party, I'd be like, hey, yeah, no, our mate's been killed. Do you not expect the follow-up to be like, what were you doing there? Surely you tip off anonymously. Or just leave it. Just leave it. And send an anonymous letter to the family. According to one newspaper article, the suspects appeared in court on the 5th of April, charged with possession of firearms and ammunition without a license, conspiracy to poach, as well as trespassing. Hopefully this, combined with having seen their friend mauled to death by an elephant, will encourage them to seek a different line of employment. Overconfident pilot. If I remember correctly, Simon is currently in the process of obtaining a pilot's license, so this goes out to him as a somewhat specific warning of what not to do. I was getting my pilot's license last year, or a year and a half ago now. 2 years ago? Is it really 2? Oh, I feel time goes so fast. And I was really doing it, and then I had 2 kids, and I was like, I don't have time for this at all. It was crazy. It's so, and I enjoyed the shit out of it. As soon as my kids grow old and leave home, I'm going to get my pilot's license. Only 16 more years! On the 14th of October 2015, a pilot known to me at least only as Patrick was flying in his plane across Montana, stopping at various airfields along the way to refuel. I've got a mate from Montana. The one thing he always says about Montana is it's really big. So I can imagine you do need a plane to get around. Apparently they used to have no limits on the highways. You'd be allowed to drive it was due discretion or something. They had a word for it. And it was just basically autobahns in Montana, but then they were like, no, I gotta have speed limits. And I think it's 70. What's the speed limit in America on highways? Is it 70? It's 70 in the UK. But everyone goes 80. It's just kind of the unwritten rule. Although the plane was new to Patrick, he himself was not new to piloting, having racked up more than 10,000 hours in the air. That's a lot. He's a very experienced pilot, being licensed to fly commercial aircraft and possessing an instructor certificate. There you go. This makes his reaction to what happened next even more surprising. During his first 2 takeoffs, he was presented with what I assume is a fairly unusual problem. Aviation fuel spilled into the cockpit. Bro, if you're flying a new plane and you're inexperienced, if there was aviation fuel in the cockpit of my plane and I've got 10 hours, I'd be like, no, let's go. We shouldn't be flying. It's not entirely clear how much, but according to the article on DarwinAwards.com, it was enough to slosh around his feet. Maybe Simon can help me out with this, but I assume that aviation fuel in the cockpit is a fairly serious problem, and if your ankles are getting wet, then you should probably stop flying. Yes, I mean, it's not one of the things on the checklist, but it's definitely one of the things that doesn't need to be on the checklist. After landing in Missoula, the 3rd stop on his journey, he decided that it might be worth speaking. That's how big Montana is. He's flying across Montana. He has to stop 3 times. He decided that it might be worth speaking to a professional about the problem, and to that end, he contacted a mechanic via the telephone. Unsurprisingly, this mechanic suggested that it was not a good idea to take off again until the problem, believed to be a fuel venting issue, had been resolved. Somehow, believing himself to be more capable of completing the journey in a plane full of highly explosive fuel, Patrick rejected the advice of the mechanic, claiming that he had asked somebody to look over the fuel system and they'd found nothing wrong. In that case, that person's blind. Are they not looking at all the fuel sloshing around on the road? It's like, everything's fine, it's supposed to happen, it's supposed to be there. This was a lie. Shortly after his final takeoff, his plane crashed and quite quickly became an inescapable fireball of burning fuel. According to the official report, the pilot was likely distracted by fuel entering the cockpit and failed to maintain adequate airspeed as he returned to the airport to rectify the fuel problem, resulting in an aerodynamic stall/spin. A somewhat explosive example of how overconfidence can easily prevent you from contributing to the future of the human race. Yeah, I mean, it was like, oh no, you've got to turn around. Just fix it in the first place. You had loads of chances. What's wrong with you? And that's where today's video ends. Thank you for what was that? That's where today's videos end. What? Come on, whistle boy. That's where today's video ends. Thank you for watching. Nailed it.